In a stunning decision that has shaken Washington and sparked outrage nationwide, President Donald Trump has revoked Secret Service protection for Kamala Harris, the historic first woman and first person of color to serve as vice president. By law, Harris was entitled to 6 months of protection after leaving office in January, but former President Joe Biden had quietly extended her detail for an additional year. Now, Trump's order, issued in a memo dated August 28th, terminates that extension, instructing the Secret Service to stand down by September 1st. The timing could not be more sensitive. Harris is about to embark on a national book tour to promote her memoir, 107 Days, recounting her short-lived but symbolic 2024 presidential run. Without federal agents by her side, she faces the daunting task of navigating a very public schedule with only private security. Critics argue the decision is reckless and vindictive, while Trump's allies insist he is merely enforcing the law and cutting waste. Yet beneath the legal language lies a deeper question. Has security itself become just another political weapon in America? Chapter 1: The Legal Framework and Trump's Memo. The roots of this controversy lie in a 2008 congressional law, which entitles former vice presidents to 6 months of Secret Service protection after leaving office. After that, any extension must be granted by presidential directive. Joe Biden, understanding the heightened risks facing Harris as both a barrier-breaking figure and a frequent political target, quietly extended her protection into 2025. Trump's August 28th memo overturned that extension in stark language, instructing the Secret Service to discontinue any security-related procedures previously authorized beyond those required by law. On paper, Trump is following the letter of the law, but critics argue that presidents are expected to use discretion in such cases, weighing the real-world threat environment over rigid statutory timelines. By ignoring credible threats against Harris and treating protection as a political favor rather than a national responsibility, detractors say Trump has crossed a dangerous line. This isn't just about Harris, it's about precedent. If future presidents can revoke protection for rivals or critics whenever they choose, the very concept of independent, apolitical security erodes. What was once a shield against violence risks becoming another arena for partisan combat. Chapter 2: The Book Tour and Heightened Exposure. Book tours are not ceremonial, they are grueling, public, and often chaotic. Harris's tour for 107 days will take her to major cities, college campuses, bookstores, and auditoriums across America. Each stop means mingling with large crowds, traveling through airports, and appearing in unsecured venues. The Secret Service does more than assign visible bodyguards. It conducts advanced sweeps of venues, coordinates with local police, monitors online chatter for threats, and deploys rapid response teams in case of emergencies. Private security, no matter how expensive, cannot replicate this nationwide infrastructure. Experts estimate the cost of comparable private protection could exceed $5 to $8 million annually, an expense Harris is unlikely to shoulder personally. More importantly, private firms lack access to federal intelligence networks that track extremist chatter, potential lone wolf actors, and foreign interference. In effect, stripping her Secret Service detail places her at greater risk precisely as she re-enters the national spotlight. The symbolism is hard to miss. America's first female vice president, embarking on a public campaign to tell her story, must now rely on private guards instead of the government she once served. Chapter 3: Harris's Documented Threat History. Harris is not just any former official. Her career has been shadowed by documented threats, some of them chilling in detail. In 2024, a Virginia man was indicted for threatening to kill Harris and former President Barack Obama using online posts to outline violent fantasies. In 2021, a Florida woman pleaded guilty to sending videos where she brandished firearms and suggested Harris would be assassinated within weeks. Throughout her tenure, extremist groups online targeted Harris with racist and misogynistic rhetoric, often naming her explicitly. Former Secret Service officials have confirmed that Harris faced a higher-than-average threat profile compared to past vice presidents. Biden's decision to extend her protection was rooted in these realities. Revoking it, therefore, is not a neutral act. It ignores years of intelligence assessments and underestimates the volatility of America's political climate. Critics warn this sets a precedent where documented threats are disregarded if politically inconvenient. A dangerous gamble in a nation that has already seen violent attacks against public officials. Chapter 4. Trump's broader pattern of revocations. Trump's decision fits a larger pattern. Since returning to office, he has revoked Secret Service protection for numerous figures, including Hunter and Ashley Biden, children of Joe Biden, Anthony Fauci, the former health official who became a pandemic-era lightning rod, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and ex-National Security Advisor John Bolton, both of whom had become critics. Supporters applaud these moves as cost-cutting, eliminating perks for people who no longer serve. But critics see a weaponization of security, punishing rivals and silencing dissent. By targeting Harris, a figure of historic importance and ongoing public visibility, Trump has amplified concerns that protection itself is now politicized currency, granted to friends and revoked from foes. If security can be withdrawn for political reasons, analysts fear it may deter future leaders, especially women and minorities, from public service, knowing their safety could depend on who holds the presidency. Chapter 5. Symbolism and America's Image. Beyond the personal risks to Harris, the revocation carries symbolic weight. She is not only a former vice president, but a trailblazer. The first woman, the first Black American, and the first South Asian American to hold the office. Her story inspired millions at home and abroad. Revoking her protection sends a troubling signal that even the most historic leaders once out of power can be left vulnerable. Internationally, this risks undermining America's soft power. For decades, the U.S. has portrayed itself as a champion of democracy, where leaders of all backgrounds can rise and be protected by the state. Leaving Harris unguarded contradicts that message and emboldens adversaries who thrive on images of division and neglect. To allies, it raises uncomfortable questions. If America cannot safeguard its own leaders, how can it credibly promote security and stability abroad? Chapter 6. Global Comparisons and Lessons Learned. In much of the world, post office protection is treated as essential, not optional. France grants lifelong protection to former presidents, recognizing their lasting symbolic and strategic value. India assigns long-term special protection group coverage to ex-leaders, given persistent threats. Israel ensures former prime ministers receive protection indefinitely. Even in the UK, where costs are scrutinized, former prime ministers like Tony Blair retain government security decades later. By contrast, America's rigid 6-month cutoff appears outdated. The rise of domestic extremism, political violence, and global terrorism makes a one-size-fits-all approach inadequate. Harris's case illustrates the flaw. She faces greater risks than many predecessors, yet is treated under the same timeline as Dan Quayle or Dick Cheney. Analysts argue the U.S. must shift to a threat-based model where extensions are decided by independent review boards, not political rivalries. Chapter 7. Fiscal Responsibility versus Political Retaliation. Defenders of Trump's move emphasize cost. Secret Service details involve dozens of personnel, specialized vehicles, and complex logistics. Why, they ask, should taxpayers spend millions on someone no longer serving in office? But critics counter that security is not a perk. It's a necessity in a polarized era where threats are real. The cost of a potential attack in terms of human life, national trauma, and America's global reputation far outweighs budgetary savings. California Governor Gavin Newsom called the move political retaliation disguised as fiscal prudence. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass went further, calling it an act of revenge that puts Harris in danger and puts our democracy in danger. This divide reflects America's larger polarization. What one side sees as efficiency, the other sees as cruelty. Chapter 8. The History of Secret Service Protection. To understand today's crisis, it helps to recall history. The Secret Service began in 1865 to fight counterfeiting. Its protective mission expanded after President William McKinley's assassination in 1901 and gradually came to cover vice presidents, their families, and major candidates. Over time, protection became a recognition not just of personal risk, but of symbolic importance. When Barack Obama ran for president in 2007, he received early protection because of racial threats. When Hillary Clinton campaigned, her detail remained due to her prominence. Harris belongs to this lineage, a visible target whose safety carries meaning far beyond herself. The question now is whether America's laws, written in calmer times, are sufficient for an age of hyperpartisanship and online radicalization. Chapter 9. Public Reaction and Calls for Reform. The public reaction to Trump's decision has been swift and polarized. Progressives see it as a dangerous escalation, one that puts Harris directly at risk. Conservatives largely applaud it as lawful and necessary. Independents ask a deeper question: should any president have unilateral power to decide who deserves protection? This moment may force Congress to act. Proposed reforms include automatic lifelong protection for both presidents and vice presidents, an independent commission to evaluate security extensions based on credible threats, tiered coverage levels, scaling down resources but never leaving former leaders entirely unguarded. Harris's case could thus spark a lasting change in how America views political security, shifting it from partisan discretion to institutional duty. Chapter 10. Harris, Trump, and the Future of Security Politics. Ultimately, this episode is about more than Harris's personal safety. It's about the kind of democracy America wants to be. Trump's supporters see a leader cutting waste and enforcing the law. His critics see a president turning protection into a partisan weapon. Harris herself now faces a difficult path, promoting her book, shaping her legacy, and navigating real risks without the full backing of the state she once served. The decision reverberates outward. If leaders like Harris can be stripped of security for political reasons, what message does that send to women, minorities, and future generations of public servants? Will they see leadership as an honor or a risk not worth taking? As Harris prepares to step on stage across the country, one thing is clear: this is more than a debate about budgets or law. It is a test of America's commitment to protecting those who have broken barriers, carried the weight of history, and still bear the crosshairs of hate. Trump's decision to revoke Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection has ignited debate over law, politics, security, and democracy itself. Is this fiscal responsibility or partisan retaliation? Is America safeguarding its leaders or abandoning them? What do you think? Should former vice presidents like Harris receive lifelong protection, or should the law stay as it is? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth breakdowns of the world's most pressing issues.